You can blame Chris, the old ass retro gamer, for this one. Links in the description below. We have 31 licensed games, and these are 31 different categories of licensed games. These are my pick of the bunch. I hope you enjoyed them. I'll try and chuck up some footage and let's get into it. Being a big Bruce Campbell fan, my pick for horror definitely has to be Evil Dead: Hail to the King on the PlayStation 1.
Groovy.
It's dated a fair bit over the years, but it is one that I am picking just because the setting is great. It starts you off in that iconic cabin, and then you work your way from there. It is not one that goes to, it doesn't kind of push the comedy side of things of Evil Dead as much as the movies did as they went on, but it is one that sticks more in the horror elements, or sticks to the horror elements of Evil Dead. You play the iconic Ash. It is a great deal of fun. It is frustrating though at times. In saying that, in between the fun, you're going to have some frustration fighting those controls, but it is one that you don't hear very often. So if you have not checked out Evil Dead: Hail to the King on PlayStation 1 and you're a horror fan, especially one horror fan of those games with your kind of tank controls, it is one that is well worth checking out. It is my pick for horror: Evil Dead: Hail to the King, PlayStation 1. Science fiction is chock-a-block full of licensed games. You can find a whole heap of licensed games in that category, but there aren't a great deal, in my opinion, of licensed games in science fiction category that are great fun. An exception to that is the Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. Vin Diesel was all in for this one.
Hello everyone.
It has his likeness. You play as the Vin Diesel character in this one of Riddick. It has his voice all the way through. It is a very, very solid title, especially for the original Xbox. It doesn't follow the storyline of the movies, and rather it puts you in a prison, and that is the prison of Butcher Bay. You only have one goal, and that is to escape the prison. It is one that I was really surprised that it kind of mashes a few genres together. You have a lot of stealth in this game, but it also mashes in there a lot of action, and it's a first-person perspective as well, which makes those two genres kind of an interesting mashup. And it's got some first-person shooting as well. You creep around the prison, and you have to navigate the other inmates in there as well. Not all of them are going to step aside for you when you want things done, or when you're sneaking around or trying to get to different places or things like that. They're actually after you as well. You've got the guards to look out for, and then you've got the security systems in place. There was never a time in this game where I didn't enjoy what I was doing. It really surprised me a lot just how good of a licensed game this one is. If you're looking for more after you've had to go at Escape from Butcher Bay, then make sure to check out on the Xbox 360 the Chronicles of Riddick: Assault on Dark Athena. And actually, pro tip, if you have not played Escape from Butcher Bay, it is well worth jumping into this one or getting your hands on a copy of this one first, because it has a remastered version of Escape from Butcher Bay on the disc. I would be grabbing the Xbox 360 version, playing through Escape from Butcher Bay first, and then jumping into Assault on Dark Athena after that. We're jumping over to the arcade for action adventure, and we're looking at the Sega Model 2. This is also one that is on the Sega Saturn. It is Die Hard Arcade.
Welcome to the party, pal!
Die Hard Arcade, you might find that on the arcade as Dynamite Decker, which is the name that I went by in Japan. Not knowing this when I first set up my arcade, I actually thought it was Dynamite Cop was the one that I'm after, but Dynamite Cop is the sequel to Die Hard Arcade. So they took it and they reskinned it from Dynamite Decker into Die Hard Arcade. It is a solid title. It is a beat 'em up, but it has 3D graphics. It's definitely the end of that era of those beat 'em ups when they were really pumping out awesome games on the arcades and making good money from them. So it is well worth checking out. This is the sequel here. It is a similar type of gameplay where we have lots of weapons that you're able to pick up, lots of different enemy varieties. Doesn't take itself seriously at all. Actually, it's quite the opposite. There's a whole bunch of out there, really weird type of things going on in both of those games, as in Die Hard Arcade and the sequel. And it has some QuickTime events in there, thrown in there as well, just for something a little bit different. This is my pick for action adventure. I don't have a copy of the next game that I'm talking about, and it is from the comedy category. It is The Simpsons, but not the arcade game, that's too obvious. The one that I'm going with is The Simpsons Virtual Springfield on the PC. That is a game that I spent a lot of time playing when I was younger with my cousins. It is a point and click style game. It is one that is, as the name suggests, Virtual Springfield. It is more of you're an outsider looking into the world of Springfield, and you're making your way through all those iconic pieces or iconic places of the TV show and seeing all of those characters, and they all act the same way that they would on the TV show. It has voice acting from the cast. It has a lot of hide and seek type. You need to go and find all the little pieces that are scattered around the Springfield world. A lot of the times to the characters, or almost all of the time, it is as if you are not there and you are just viewing these things as they're happening. It's almost like a hidden camera type of experience as you make your way around. It is not one that I've ever played to the end, because as a kid we just had too much fun kind of playing around and looking through all the different places that Springfield has to offer. It is a lot of fun. It is not one that's talked about very often, but it is well worth trying to find. Harder to find a physical copy, especially if you want that nice big box that goes with it.
See the fun box? No! My bag! My bag!
Yeah, they're pretty tricky to find, at least in Australia, maybe around where you live as well. So maybe one to download to have a bit of a try of. It is not one that you'll find on the consoles of the time. It is purely one that you will have to go and jump on the PC to have a play of. My pick for comedy, The Simpsons Virtual Springfield on the PC.
But that's nothing compared to the horrors that lurk beneath the trapdoor, in the dark, waiting to come out.
Oh, hey, for our next one, we're going to have to dig deep in one of these little goodie bags. Alright, let's have a look. Here it is. This is probably one of the only anime games that I have, and it is on this tiny little cartridge. So my pick for anime is a Sega title. It is Astro Boy, and what's this one called? Amiga Factor on the Game Boy Advance. It's a really nice little shoot 'em up, beat 'em up type of experience. It mixes those two genres really well. The side scroller, nothing too fancy. It's not going for those 3D environments or anything. It's the 2D environments going from one side of the screen to the other, and then them throwing all types of things at you. From memory, it's made by the same people who did Gunstar Heroes. It is another game that I don't hear very much about. So if you are looking for something a little bit different on the Game Boy Advance, if you're looking for one of those anime titles that you may not have had a go at, then check out Astro Boy Amiga Factor on the Game Boy Advance. And even though it's a bit of a family-friendly title, it does involve a bit of reading to make your way through this one. When we're talking 1970s movies, the licensed game that I think I enjoy the most from that category would have to be Star Wars on the NES.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
It's not one that I have beat at any point. It is definitely too hard for me, or I'm not patient enough most of the time. I really like the feel of you jump in and all of a sudden you're going around on the little speeder in where Luke grew up on Tatooine, and you're searching for parts for the Millennium Falcon, and you're going into caves, and it's that's the bit that I remember the most about that game, and the bit that you see it the most because it's at the beginning. First of all, you're searching through caves, looking through things, and you come across these enemies. Some of them are relatively easy, some of them are quite powerful, and then you make your way towards the Mos Eisley cantina, and in there you find Han Solo, and then you are also going around finding other characters to join you on your mission. I can't say I've ever been too far, as I said, in that game, but from what I do play when I chuck that one on, I always love playing that game. It just brings back... It has a really good type of feel of the movie without trying to emulate it exactly and kind of stuffing it up. There's not many licensed games that do that. They change it just enough to make it right. That's one that I really think does. 1980s movies. While we're on the NES, my pick for 1980s movies would have to be Die Hard.
Thanks for the advice.
I remember renting this game when I was young, and it was really weird. The type of gameplay that they made Die Hard into, it seemed, and it probably would make a very good NES side-scrolling action game, Die Hard. If it was in the right hands, it would have been one of those games that people would have thoroughly enjoyed. But Activision didn't go for that in this one. What we ended up getting was a top-down perspective of John McClane running around without his shoes on, and you get to spray a lot of bullets around, but so do your enemies. It's hard not to get shot in this game. And it can be hard to shoot an enemy in this game as well, just because of the way the controls are. But that doesn't stop it from being fun. It's got some really kind of out there, well, not out there, it's got some really convoluted type of gameplay structure that it wants you to take. It wants you to do things in certain orders or to go and find things, and it doesn't really explain itself very well, especially when you start on a high floor of the skyrise and then you're working between floors, and then there's some floors that you can go to and some that you can't, and it's probably one that I need to go back and have a guide sitting there with me. I've seen a lot of playthroughs that seem to struggle with it a fair bit as well, but yeah, good fun, well worth a play, and it is one that gets talked more about these days just because of how big Die Hard's kind of become in recent years. It's always been a big movie, but certainly it's really taken hold of pop culture recently. But yeah, it's a good, fun, solid game to go back and have a play of. My pick for 1990s movie is not actually one that's on a console, and it's not one that you would be able to emulate on a console. You can do it on a PC, but the one that I'm going to choose for my 1990s action movie is the Addams Family Pinball Machine. I remember going on holidays and playing the Addams Family Pinball Machine, and it was just great fun.
Heart memories precious.
As a kid, you didn't need to know much about pinball except for you slap that ball back and try not to have it fall into that gutter or go down through the paddles at any point in time, and just hit that thing everywhere, and it was always making noise, and it had enough kind of it had enough going on that it would keep you enthralled even when you didn't look to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. It is one that it has great design as well. The way the pinball machine looks, it just fits. It fits a pinball machine so well. It's a shame that it is so expensive to get a pinball machine these days, and especially if you're looking for one as iconic as Addams Family, even though it's one of those ones that has been definitely, there's definitely high numbers of those ones that were produced because it was so popular, but you're talking ridiculous money. See if you can find it out in the wild to give it a playthrough. If you can't, then emulation might be the go, but whichever way you can play it, have a go at Addams Family Pinball. It's a hell of a time. Right, 2000s movies. So a movie that was made in the 2000s that has made a great video game. Mine's on the Xbox 360, or at least I did have it on the Xbox 360 until my Xbox 360 had a little malfunction where the hard drive was corrupted, and when I wiped that, and when I went to play my game that I'd paid good money for and thought that I would have on my hard drive on the Xbox 360 forever, turns out you cannot.
Is Scott here?
You know what? He just left.
So it's good that they've re-released this one, and that is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It really is a reimagining of, it's hard to remember the name. River City Ransom. The reason why it's so hard to remember is because if you're from Australia, we didn't have River City Ransom, we had Street Gangs. And Street Gangs on the NES, which is exactly the same game as River City Ransom, really Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a love letter to Street Gangs. And I'm going to call it Street Gangs. It really took all those elements and then brought them into a modern style beat 'em up with really good graphics, a good sense of progression, one that at first, because I didn't realize that you had to beef up your character, I found a little bit frustrating because I tried to play it through level by level, but once you get the hang of, actually I need to go back and replay some of those levels again to upgrade my character before I'm able to pass the next stage, it is a great deal of fun, and one that I won't be playing probably for a long time or ever again, because I really don't like spending money on something twice and being disappointed when it disappears. So if you haven't played it and you haven't spent your money and you didn't get swindled, then there's a game for you. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a great deal of fun, and it's my pick for the movies of a movie in the 2000s. My 2010s movie, or a movie that was released in 2010 that was turned into a video game, is Star Wars The Force Unleashed.
He's as clumsy as he is stupid.
But I haven't played this one. I'm talking about the Lego version. I don't have a physical copy of that one anymore to show you, so this is just a prop. But if you can grab the Lego version of this one, if you have kids like I do, and they're looking to get into gaming, then the Lego games are a great kind of introduction to gaming. You can't die, or I should say when you do die, you're still playing the game. There's no real penalty except for losing a few coins or losing some money, and the Star Wars Lego Unleashed game is a great playthrough. Apologies for the interruption there, had to take a little break, and sorry about the noise. We had so much rain over the last few days, enough that a tree has fallen on the game room. Snakes taken up residence at our front door to hide away from the rain. and we've had a whole bunch of other stuff going on. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't have any more rain on our roof for tonight, and I can continue on with this. Let's go. Alright, we're really in for a treat with this next one. This is my pick for the best Stallone game, and it's Rambo 3 on the arcade. Let's take a look, it's a ripper. Right, this one's a little Tato gem, and if you played Cabal, I'll just turn it down. If you played Cabal, you pretty much know what to expect here, except not as good. The scene names are amazing. Scene 1, Escape. Here we have Rambo doing his thing. Arrows with the exploding tips. We only have the 2 buttons in play. Unfortunately, it'd be good to have a roll in this one, but we do not. We've only got shoot and bombs, and that's it. A lot of destructible elements, which is always brings a little bit of something different to these games. We've got to make precautions here. Always good to make precautions. It is one of those games where it is really hard not to get hit. The old shooting battle. That's where you know you're onto a good thing. If you have a stage called shooting battle, then you know you're in for some action. Not just your regular battle. Shooting battle is really a great contrast to your types of hiding battles, or your running battles, or your throwing things battles. Time to make precautions again. Rambo was always making precautions. I remember that in Rambo 3. Always making precautions.
We did it, John.
Yeah. Wait.
What the hell is that?
Drop that weapon! Now! You have no chance of escape! Come forward! I wish to take you back alive!
Not enough precautions being made. Let's see what's next after the shooting battle. Scene 3. Chase. Thought long and hard about the names of those stages. But there you go, yeah. Rambo 3. It's my pick for the Sylvester Stallone best licensed game. I actually think it is quite a lot of fun, even though I do think it's got some really silly aspects to it as well. But you can see from the gameplay that it does hold your attention for a little bit. Not the greatest game, but it is certainly one to try out. Certainly a little bit of fun and worth one playthrough at least. Right, let's see what is next. A licensed game that I never thought would exist. That one for me has to go to Star Wars Shadow of the Empire. Growing up, I expected there to be Star Wars games, and I even had a few Star Wars games myself. But the thing that surprised me about this one, the thing that I didn't really think I would ever see, was the Battle of Hoth, imagined so well. Sorry for my Star Wars ignorance, but where you're up against those, the walkers, so the ones that kind of look like camels, and where you can then get your little ship and fire out a harpoon and wrap itself around the legs of one of those camel walkers, and then have it fall down onto the snow floor and blow up, and be playing out that battle in what at the time looked like just amazing graphics that we'd never seen before. It is one of those rare times where you're like, wow, this is so impressive. I never actually thought it could be imagined so well, and that is why it is my pick. It is also a really good game, and it's really nice that it throws you into that scenario, and then after that it changes it up so much. This game has so many different features and so many different type of gameplay elements, and such a mix of genres, and it's just it's an amazing game. It has some really frustrating parts in it as well, which is, I think, why it doesn't get say it touted as one of the best Star Wars games, but in my opinion it is. And if you took out all those little frustrating parts or tweaked them a little bit, then it would have been the best Star Wars game that has existed, I think. So that is my pick for a game that I thought would never exist. Shadows of the Empire. Licensed game that didn't need a game, I think that would have to be World War Z. And, or that's World War Z for our American friends. World War Z is one of those games that I feel didn't need to exist just because of how oversaturated the gaming market is with zombie games. And it didn't seem like I didn't read the book, but I listened to the audio book version of World War Z, and I wasn't that impressed. I know that people found that amazing, but I found it a bit dull. And then they made the movie, which people thought was a bit dull, and I thought that was pretty amazing. And then they took this license and then made this multiplayer experience out of it that really was the new Left 4 Dead. And it was taking the best elements of Left 4 Dead and bringing them to a new audience and bringing them to a new era. In World War Z, you work as a little team, and there are a few different game modes, but the main game mode, the main campaign type mode, is where you work yourself through some type of scenario. Either you're out to try and rescue people, or you might be trying to do some other mission-based objective, and you work through that map with them. I've only played it with 2 players, but you can play it, I think, up to 4 in those type of scenarios. And it seems to be really well balanced for 2, so I imagine it can only be that way with 4 as well. And then there's a really cool mode, which is like a horde mode, where they just keep spawning different zombie waves, and you've got to survive for as long as you can, which is a whole heap of fun as well. It doesn't have any right to be as good as it is, considering the license that it's based on is so wishy-washy with the book, which is completely different to the movie, and then it's got this game that is different again. But it's great, and it's really one that I feel it didn't need a game to go with it, but I'm really glad it did, because it was a whole heap of fun. Back over to the Nintendo 64 for a licensed sports game that I feel is a great one. And for me, it is NBA Hangtime on the Nintendo 64. This one I don't hear many people talking about, and I think the reason why is because of how the game is named. This is NBA Jam, and it's a pure version of NBA Jam that has been just tweaked slightly in terms of graphics and gameplay and rosters and things like that. It is probably my favourite NBA Jam game, and it's well worth your time. Check this one out. If you're a fan of NBA Jam, where you've got the 2-on-2 style of basketball, where kind of anything goes and there's no penalties for roughing it up, then well worth your time. And the one tip that I will say, if you do get into this though, is have a look through the menu system. Set your controls to suit you, because the ones that you start with kind of suck. So make sure you tweak those controls to make it more like the old versions of NBA Jam on the Super Nintendo and things like that. You can do it, it's easy to do. Unfortunately, I don't think it remembers, as in saves your options each time, so I think you have to go through and tweak it every time. But do that, and you will have the best NBA Jam experience that you've had. RoboCop 2 on the NES is my pick for the most underrated licensed game. It's one of those games that people hate. They hate it, and I don't. I think it's good. Let's have a quick look at it. So basically, there's not much. They didn't really do much between the first and second RoboCop games on the NES. But one thing that becomes clear when you first play this is if you don't go and smash the drugs, which are what are they called? Nukes? Are they? Then if you don't smash all those little containers of nukes, then you're not going to be able to finish the level. So here is my Robocop here, and as you can see, I can't go back. So you've really got to plan out your route with Robocop before you begin. This game has a whole heap of slide. Check that out. He slides for ages, and because he slides for ages, it can make the game very tricky to kind of make your jumps that you want to jump, and it also makes it tricky to finish where you want to land, where you want to land. So you've got guys with bulletproof vests, you've got guys with throwing projectiles, you've got your signature handgun there. And it does take a while to figure out your levels. You work off your life systems off batteries, so as you go you can collect battery power-ups that will keep you going for a while. There are a few secret little levels and things to this Robocop as well. There's one. So there are these little secret areas that you can head to as well to get a few bonus points. And there we go, finish the level. So it gives you a percentage of how many nukes you have managed to rid the streets of. So you do get a little bit of a second chance there. If you haven't destroyed enough nuke in the side-scrolling level, then you go to the shooting range and you try and brush up on your skills there. But if you fail that one, then it's back to the level that you were previously on. So you have these kind of really out there type of levels, like this one here. Some really hard platforming, and as I said, with him being so slidey and slippery, and I've just left it too long and that person has died. But it does make for a challenging experience. My pick for licensed game for a television show has to be the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the arcade. This is my favourite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. I know that lots of people say Hyperstone Heist is better than this one. I haven't actually spent as much time with it because every time I want to put on a Turtles game, this is the Turtles game that I put on. So growing up, my parents owned a caravan park. In that caravan park, they had a little game room. And in that game room, it used to get swapped out for different types of arcade machines and pinball machines by somebody who would come and swap them over and then take a share of the profits. And this one was there for many, many years. And it's one that I grew up with, and it was great fun. It was a 2-player version, and so when I created my arcade machine, I had to have this one, and I had to have 4 players, because that's the way that this should be played. It's your typical side-scroller, but you have the 4 different Ninja Turtles to choose from. It's a typical April gets kidnapped, or it starts off with the fire, but April gets kidnapped and then you got to go on a mission to save her, and then stop Shredder and Krang from the TV show. I know Turtles is based on a comic, but this video game is very much based on the TV show, the cartoon TV show, and not the comic or the movie. It does have that unfortunate kind of arcade cheat where your bosses will pretty much hit you no matter what. Like, you can, obviously people do become ridiculously good at these type of games, so that they're able to beat these type of bosses with 1 credit. But I don't know, they've always seemed like they're just geared to give you hits unfairly. So once you get kind of past the fact that you're going to be pumping in a lot of credits to beat this one, then if you accept that, then you can have a lot of fun with it. Even when we had the arcade cabinet at the caravan park, it was always, didn't have the little flip switch. We ended up having to line up all our 20-cent pieces and just pumping in money to try and get anywhere with this one. I like the little destructible elements that it has in it as well. That was always fun. Any arcade back in those days that had those destructible elements was far more fun than those that did not. My pick for best soundtrack or best music in a licensed game is definitely Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. It is one that I remember listening to. It's one of those first games that I remember really paying attention to the soundtrack and always checking who it was that was creating that part of the soundtrack. I really, really enjoyed May 16 by Lagwagon with the vocals of Joey Cape.
Heart memories precious.
That was really one of those great tracks where if that came on, you were stoked and it really kind of amped up the game. There were a few tracks on that really made the game feel like it was part of the punk movement and part of everything cool about being a kid or learning skateboarding and being part of skateboarding culture as well. That soundtrack with all those great artists on it was an amazing backing to that game, and it's still one that I think is a great deal of fun. And it's a shame that you have to go back to the original PlayStation version of that game to be able to get that original soundtrack. That was an era of my life as well where the music that I was listening to was coming purely just from recommendations off of friends, or you would go and grab a compilation CD from a record label and find some cool bands or some great bands that were associated with that same label. It was a time when you really had to dig to find your music, and it was an awesome time for that as well because it was just a whole bunch of sharing. And then came games like this, like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, which then had this great soundtrack where you knew a few of these bands already and you kind of just leaped from there into some of the other types of music as well. So some of the music that I remember really enjoying off of that soundtrack, my top picks would be May 16 from Lagwagon and Joey Cape. That was just great when that came on. Papa Roach, Blood Brothers. I'm not as keen on anything Papa Roach as I was back then, but it fit that kind of era really nicely. No Cigar from Millencolin. Millencolin was one of my favourite bands, if not my favourite band from that era. Still one of my favourite bands to this day, and that No Cigar was a classic of theirs. And also Rage Against the Machine, Guerrilla Radio. That was one of those tracks that I did not know before playing the game, and it's still one of those songs that is so good. Great game. It's got great gameplay as well, and still one that you can jump back into these days. And now with the remastered version, I've heard that's really good. Definitely a really wicked soundtrack, and one that is well worth checking out the game just for the soundtrack. Licensed game based on a toy line. This one is not, I wouldn't say it's an amazing game, but it is a lot of fun. It is Nerf N-Strike. So I struggled a bit with this topic, so it's not like this one is one of my favourites or anything like that, but in terms of Wii light gun games, this one isn't bad, and it's a family-friendly one as well. It's really just a series of kind of shooting range challenges and shooting range levels. When this one was released, when Nerf N-Strike was released with the Wii, it came with its own gun. So it says it's the Switch Shot EX3 blaster. But I tell you what, that thing is super expensive these days. You'd be lucky to find that one for a good price. Well, it's in Australia it is anyway. Grab one of those clunky kind of Wii light guns that they have, or you can get those aftermarket ones, which are a lot nicer if you can get the ones kind of like this setup here, where you've got your pistol and then you hold your nunchuck separately. These are my favourite types of setup for the Wii. But yeah, it would be nice to have one of those. It'd be nice to have one of those Nerf guns. I think it even had something that you pump the bottom or something like that, but I'm not quite sure about that because I don't own one and I never will because they're ridiculously expensive for that bit of plastic. So yeah, bit of a shame, but still worth a play with just your normal Wii accessories. Really do enjoy Mad Max, and definitely Mad Max 2 is my favourite movie of the franchise.
Thank you. Save it. I'm just here for the gasoline.
But the new Mad Max movie, or Fury Road, came with a game. And now this game, Mad Max, that was out on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, is not a game that is directly based on the movie, but it's more based in the world of... It does take elements of the other Mad Max movies, but it's mainly based in the world of Mad Max Fury Road. And you play as a Mad Max that is a different type of look and a different voice actor to Mel Gibson or Tom Hardy. But it is definitely a Mad Max game. It has everything that you could want from a Mad Max game. It's really pits you in a situation where you are a loner and you're exploring the wasteland. You're trying as best you can to make a vehicle that's going to be able to do what you want it to do, which is survive and kind of scavenge and take out those people who are trying to take you out. So trying to take them out first. You end up with a friend along the way who seems kind of obsessed with your different car needs, and it's just a really good storyline. I wasn't thrilled on the kind of the way they took things towards the end, but definitely it is a solid title and a solid addition to Mad Max. They could have easily taken the easy road and made a game about one of the movies, but they didn't. They made completely their own thing. And this, to me, is the most ambitious licensed game that I can think of. It's just a whole heap of fun. It really is a mix of that type of hand-to-hand combat of the new Batmans and a Carmageddon game that you would want in the new era, which is definitely not what we got with the new Carmageddon game. So if you're a fan of Carmageddon games as well, this is the best Carmageddon game. That's not actually a Carmageddon game at all. If you weren't a fan of Avalanche Studios' Rage 2, then don't be put off by that, because when you go back to Mad Max, it is not the same type of game. Definitely done by the same studio, but this is the pick of the bunch. This is much, much better than their next release of Rage 2, which was a bit of a disappointment. So check it out. Mad Max, most ambitious licensed game, in my opinion. The next licensed game I'm going to speak about is the best representation of its license. And to me, that is on the Super Nintendo with WWF Royal Rumble. This game is so much fun, and it was so much fun back when it was released, and it is still so much fun to this day. It is an LGN game, but don't let that put you off. It is really well made, and it controls really well, and it brings out the best of the Royal Rumble experience of WWF. That is really the mode that I used to play the most, and so it has one-on-one, tag team, triple tag team, or the Royal Rumble, and the Royal Rumble is where it's at. You can play 1 or 2 players, and it gives you a difficulty slider at the start, which is something that a lot of games do not, especially a difficult slider that goes from 1 to 10. Then you get to choose from a selection of your classic 90s WWF wrestlers. So here we go. Put you in at number 1. So there's a couple of different ways you could get a character out. And that is, you could get them close to the edge, and then when they have lost enough power, you can fling them out, or you bounce them against the ropes, and then try and push the punch button to then do one of those type of hip flips. And you don't want to lose too much of your power meter, because once you start losing your power meter, then you have a good chance of being able to be overpowered by the others, and in turn thrown out of the ring. There goes another. And the other players wait for you to eliminate to make some room before they bring in more. Speaking about some of the best licensed game, well, this one is not one of those. This is the worst representation of a license. And I'm going with The Fifth Element on the PlayStation 1.
Think mine is broken, huh? Well, I gotta get the broken.
I remember when I first played The Fifth Element on PlayStation, and I could not figure out how to get Bruce Willis to do what I wanted him to do. It doesn't seem to make sense. You're pushing all the right buttons, but it's not relating. It's not being related to your character the way that it should be. It's a terrible game, and it's a really good license, and it's a real shame that it was just treated so poorly. I'm not sure what happened, and I'm not sure how it got past that kind of testing phase to become an actual game and to become the pile of garbage that it is. But PlayStation 1 did have a lot of those type of shovelware games, and a lot of different licenses were put into games that people, I guess, companies thought that they could make a quick buck off of. It's a movie that could be turned into a game so easily. It just seems to lend to the video game industry really well, but somehow it was totally stuffed up, and it's a horrible, horrible mess. The best licensed game based on a celebrity, my pick would have to be Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster. Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster was a complete surprise to me. When growing up and having my NES, and then getting, I think it was for Christmas, I got Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. And I did not know who Jackie Chan was at the time, but that game was amazing. And I actually didn't realize that Jackie Chan was an actual person until quite a bit later. And then when I saved up and bought my PlayStation from from the store, I wanted a game to go along with it, and I looked through the shelves on the games that they have for sale that day, and I saw Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster, and by this time I knew who Jackie Chan was, and I wasn't entirely sure that I'd be making a good choice, just knowing how the game industry had kind of pumped out all this shovelware based on people. But thinking back to how much fun I had with Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu on the original Nintendo, I thought I'd give it a go. And it is a really good game. It had cartoony graphics with still this semi-realistic charm to them. It had a goofy storyline that was a lot of fun, about something to do with Jackie Chan's grandfather, and it had mystical elements to it as well. It had beat 'em up sections as well as Stuntmaster, as you'd expect. It had other platforming type sections as well, and sometimes it mixed those two and created a lot of challenge. What it didn't do was played unfairly. All of the levels and all of the situations were manageable, and they were all things that if you worked hard enough you could make it through. It's a really good game, and I'm sure it still holds up to this day, it'd be well worth checking out. My pick for the best license based on a celebrity. Licensed music turned into a game. It's a strange genre, and it's either things like dancing games or rhythm games, or then there's not much else to pick from. But there are a few out there. One that always provided a lot of fun in our household when it first came out was Dance Central 2. I'm not even sure how this game ended up in my collection. I think originally it came with the Xbox 360 Connect bundle that I originally bought, but I'm not sure. But I'm glad it did. I am not somebody who is into pop music, but this game is ridiculously fun. It is only fun, I imagine, if you have something like the Xbox 360 Connect. But I was a big fan of the Connect when it came out, and unfortunately they didn't do the Connect justice when they brought out the Xbox One. It was a mess. But the original Xbox 360 Connect was a great deal of fun, and Dance Central 2 was a great game to play. It was just that mix of seriousness and ridiculousness. So you would have these moves that were able to be tracked by the Kinect, and they were able to be tracked pretty well. But then the moves that they were asking you to do they just looked ridiculous. They didn't look good as a dance at all, and that was the fun of it. Because if you were playing with a group of people, or even just one other person, they would be laughing at the stupid stuff that you were doing, and you were trying to hold it together to try and track the movements of the Kinect. But it ended up just being a funny kind of mess. It is well worth a try if you've never had a go at a Dance Central game before. I'm not sure if the others are as good as this, because this is where it started and finished for me, but it is my pick for the best licensed music game. And it's not so much to do with the games that were on there, although the music that was on there, but the music that went on there fit the game really well. My favourite song that I like to put on this one was La Rue, Bulletproof. That was just a really fun song to go along with a really fun game. My favourite Disney licensed game, and it's one that I used to play when I was younger. I had the Nintendo Entertainment System, and some of my cousins had the Sega Master System. So we would, every now and then, we'd get to swap over and try out each other's games. And that's one that I used to really enjoy playing, was Dick Tracy on the Sega Master System. I remember you used to walk along, and you'd have two kind of street, like the two sides of the street, and you'd walk along the bottom and have to deal with the people who came along the bottom, and you could do hand-to-hand combat, I believe, as well. And then you could bring out your atomic gun, or I think it was, or you could bring out your gun for the foreground characters. It was just a good representation of that license, and one that I found to be something completely different than any other game that I had played on the Nintendo Entertainment System that it had, and certainly one that was different than most Sega Master System games as well. So well worth a check out, well worth a look, the Dick Tracy game on the Sega Master System. A good licensed game that is based on a comic would be Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. So Cadillacs and Dinosaurs was apparently based on a comic. That was something that I didn't know until recently. But this one's a 3-player game, 3-player beat 'em up, where you get to choose from 4 different characters. I always used to go for somebody who was high on power. Oh, it's chosen for me anyway. And this one was an interesting thing where you're going after poachers that have either trapped or are trying to kill dinosaurs. And every now and then you'll come across those dinosaurs and they will sometimes become enraged if you accidentally hit them or if one of the enemies hits them. And then so you would have the dinosaurs trying to attack you as well, but your main objective is to try to save the dinosaurs rather than to do anything other than that to them. It's a solid beat 'em up with similarities to things like Final Fight. 2 buttons, so you've got your hit and you've got your jump, but you can also push those together for a desperation move. There are things to pick up, so different weapons and forms of guns and hand-to-hand combat type things as well. So here's one of those situations where you have one of the dinosaurs and then we have our enemy player enraging that one. So then the dinosaur, if you get in its way, will attack you, but it also attacks the enemy characters as well. Can tap that double forward for a sprint. There we go, so dinosaur's gone off happily. Yeah, so Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, very much worth checking out. A video game that is based off a comic. My pick for a licensed game that is a multiplayer game would be Star Wars Battlefront, the new version of Star Wars Battlefront. So not the Xbox original, but the Xbox One version. And it is a game that was really well balanced when it first came out. It had the graphics were just phenomenal. It was amazing to see some of those types of places like Endor recreated with modern graphics. And then you had your heroes as well that you could play as you are fighting, and there were big battles as well. Not quite sure how many would be in one type of experience. This is saying it could hold up to 40, so 20 on each team. And it was a lot of fun. It felt like you were progressing really well through the game. Even if you weren't doing so well, you would still feel like you were getting good progression. Shame that the second one never felt that way, but definitely this first one did. It's got some really cool co-op offline experiences as well. You can do a few different types of the set scenarios, and you could also set it up so that you could verse or play against each other as well in versus matches offline. They weren't as fun, but definitely the co-op offline stuff was good fun. Yeah, then it wasn't just playing as the rebels or the Imperials on the ground. You could also grab little power-up tokens that would then send you into the skies or into one of the vehicles or into one of the like tank-like characters, and then or as one of the heroes and battle it out as in one of those or as one of those characters as well. Yeah, great deal of fun online. Not sure if it still has the numbers going online that it did.
Oh, he's not dead. Not yet.
But it's definitely it's cheap as chips, and it's one that's worth checking out. My pick for the licensed game that is the worst game based on a license, or my least favourite, has to be this one, which is Hunt for Red October. And it's not even that it's because I don't have nostalgia for it. It is one that I actually owned as a kid, and it's just terrible. It's a terrible, terrible game.
Well, sir, I was just thinking that perhaps there's another possibility we might consider.
The graphics look terrible. The gameplay is really quite boring and slow, and it's just, it becomes so hard so quickly as well that it's really just a terrible, terrible game. I'm not sure what they were thinking with having graphics like this. Like, what's going on in that background? I always wondered where I am. Am I on a damn wall? Is that what's happening? It looks like it's supposed to be a pier, but it just doesn't make sense, this game. And then I used to get to the second level, or maybe it was the third, and it was just not worth playing. It's just a really bad game. Yeah, I just hate it. I don't even feel like playing it well at any stage. I just feel like running through. It's really bad. Hunt for Red October. Steer clear. My favourite video game based on a license would have to be the Judge Dredd pinball machine. I have wanted the Judge Dredd pinball machine to have as my own for so many years. It is just a fantastic looking machine. It's a lot of fun to play that machine as well, and the music and the sound effects that come out of that thing are great as well. Just the character alone, the Judge Dredd character, is really cool. I've never really I've read his first comic, and I actually own the first comic, and I tried reading one of the novels and didn't really get into it. I really like both of the movies that have come out to do with Judge Dredd. It's one of those things that there was a time when I considered selling absolutely everything in my video game collection to try and get that one machine. So selling all the console stuff that I had, and maybe keeping the arcade and a few bits here and there, but selling off almost everything and then trying to put it all into that. But now with pinball prices going up the way they have, it's almost to the point where it's doubled in price from when I looked at getting it 6 years ago to what it is now. So it will have to be emulation or go and play it in somewhere that has a physical version. There are places that have that are around here, but unfortunately if they're not kept in repair, then your rubbers that go on your paddles and on the other things to get the correct hitbacks and stuff, they just don't work properly. So it is hard to find that original pinball experience, but it is my pick for the best licensed video game that is out there, Judge Dredd pinball machine. I almost forgot my favourite licensed game based on a board game, and that would have to be Star Wars Monopoly. Star Wars Monopoly is one that I had from when the game came out, and this one was released in 1997 for Windows. So it boasted 150 film clips, and you got to play as a range of different Star Wars characters. The Game Master was really the C-3PO. So he would talk you through the game, and he would actually be the banker and things like that, I believe. But yeah, I used to really enjoy this game. I put many hours into this one. It used to have a fair amount of loading in it as well, so you had to wait for that. But it is a game that really I spent a lot of time playing, considering that it was just a video game based off a board game. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate that you've checked out this video and that you've made it this far and you've been along for this ride of licensed games with me. This was a video that was put out by Chris the Old Ass Retro Gamer, who put out one video every day for a month, and he asked other people to join in and make a video as well. This has been a long time coming, this video that I've made. I really hope that you go and check out Chris's 31 licensed video game videos. They're just amazing. He makes some of the greatest content that is out there. Who knows what's coming next, but I hope you're sticking around for it and joining in on that fun as well. Thanks for spending some time in the game room. Hey dog. Lazy little fella. You want to stick your head back in now, are you? Spend another 3 days with us.